Okay, Unit 9, Lecture 2b, Internment of Japanese Americans. We're going to start with. We're going to try and finish these up right now. All right, during World War II, the United States government relocated most Japanese Americans to internment camps. All right, know what an internment camp is. All right, where the government required them to stay until the end of the war. Japanese Americans could not leave these camps without government permission. Internment especially affected Japanese American populations living on the West Coast, where there was a lot of suspicion of them being spies or traitors, and where most Japanese Americans happen to live. All right, so in 1944, the United States Supreme Court upheld the federal government's right to place Japanese Americans in internment camps in the case of Korematsu versus the United States. That should have been on your whiteboard. That's your next Supreme Court case, okay? In 1988, President Ronald Reagan finally issued a public apology to the Japanese Americans. The United States government made some financial restitution payments to the thousands of surviving internees. We gave them like 10 cents on the dollar. All right, these people lost their homes, they lost their businesses while their sons and husbands were over fighting in World War II in Europe, and very, very decorated. Very, very decorated. The Nisei regiments are the highest decorated regiments in the whole U.S. Army. Okay. The experience of Japanese Americans during World War II is a clear example of how racial prejudice, coupled with wartime fears, can affect the civil liberties of minorities in a democracy like the United States. Two basic reasons existed for the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. First, strong anti-Japanese sentiment and prejudice existed on the West Coast, and second, many Americans falsely believed they were siding with the enemy. Okay? Now, the role of the media in World War II. During World War II, the American media and entertainment industries saw their role as supporting the American war effort by promoting nationalism. All right, the United States government maintained strict censorship of reporting of the war by American media. Public morale and ad campaigns kept movies, plays, and shows focused on the war effort. All right. The American entertainment industry produced propaganda that boosted morale and patriotic support for the war effort, as well as portrayed the enemy in stereotypical ways. All right, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. All right, with the end of the war, hundreds of thousands of GIs began returning home. Okay, and the government gave a GI Bill to them, all right, which provided the returning GIs with low-interest loans to buy homes, go to school, start businesses, or buy a farm, all right. So all of these GIs returning home and starting families with their sweethearts also led to what we call the baby boom. We'll expand on this in class a little bit, a rapid rise of births, which immediately followed World War II, and it kind of makes sense, right? Everybody's been over in Europe, away from home. All right, so the GI Bill is great. Remember that, okay? Remember baby boom. I'll expand on them in class. After World War II, Germany is going to be divided into 4 zones. I want you to know this map, all right? Add the video. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so Germany's going to be divided into 4 zones. Berlin will be divided into 2. Okay, the British, French, and U.S. and USSR will each divide or take a zone in Germany. Eventually, the 3 democratic or democracy zones will join together to be West Germany, while the Soviets will continue to occupy and keep control of East Germany, which will develop a communist economy. All right, and this division of Germany is going to last the entire Cold War. We'll go into it in more detail next unit. Right, Berlin's also split west and east, free and communist. Japan will be occupied by U.S. troops under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, all right, with the hopes of ending militarism and creating a democratic government with a constitution that is based on or modeled on the U.S. Constitution, okay, those sort of principles. We're going to see the creation of the United Nations after World War II, okay? We're going to have to be somewhat familiar with that, an organization of the world's nations based in New York City. It's there to keep the peace and prevent future war, all right? It's got 2 parts, the General Assembly with 1 vote per nation. It makes up it has membership as all of the nations of the world. And part 2 is the Security Council with 15 members, 10 of them rotating, 5 permanent. The U.S., USSR, France, Great Britain, and China, all permanent members of the Security Council, and all possess veto power. All right, so the goal of the UN is to solve the world's problems and keep the peace. That's the end of Unit 9, okay?